Education is not just a topic that affects a small population. Education affects nearly everyone within a society, and American education is no exception to that rule. American education is a huge topic of controversy because so many people and factors are involved, and because it is such an important topic to the entire country for many reasons. Education is the way that we prepare today's youth to become our country's future, and it is responsible for making them educated and involved members in our society. American education in the recent past has become a very controversial topic because it is thought that education is now more focused on test scores, grade point averages, college admission statistics, and standardized tests than it is on the students' learning and whether or not they are actually becoming educated. It was once said by Albert Einstein that the only thing that interferes with my learning is my education. This statement might be more accurate than one is willing to admit with the way that American educational system is currently being run. The biggest problem that people are expressing is that students are no longer learning to actually learn and comprehend the material given. Rather, these students are memorizing facts and data or cheating, even taking performance enhancing drugs such as Adderall to help test well and score well so that they look like they know the information, whether they actually do or not. One major root of this problem is the No Child Left Behind Act. Ever since the No Child Left Behind Act that was brought into play in 2002, it is required for all schools across the country to make standardized testing a priority and test students annually in subjects ranging from math and science to reading and writing. This was supposed to be a good thing to make sure that all states are keeping their students in check and to make sure that teachers are following their curriculum and learning the right information. There are several unintended consequences that came from this act, though. To begin, a lot of states are now just competing with each other to see who can get the highest scores, only teaching the materials on the exams, which does not allow kids to reach their full potential as long as they meet the state standards. One article that talks about standardized testing and the downsides of it explains some of those drawbacks as the pressure to raise scores encourages cheating and teaching to the test. Subjects such as art and music, which are not currently tested in most states, get less emphasis, and students may miss being exposed to a rich academic environment. Issues to consider. This is being brought into play in a lot of different aspects of teaching and what teachers have to consider while teaching and testing the students. They are under pressure to have the students look good on standardized tests, under pressure from the parents to have them learning and having good grades, and they're under pressure from the school to look good, but they also have to decide what information to teach and for what reasons. There should be a way for them to make sure that students are learning what they are supposed to be learning without taking away from the other aspects of education in school. Not only does it take away from different types of subjects, but also students learn differently, and some students may test well when they don't actually know much of the information, and some students may test poorly even though they know the information, especially when putting so much emphasis on it, it'll cause testing anxiety. Another part of the problem is college admissions and grade point averages in high school. Schools put so much emphasis on these things that they ignore the overall education and learning process of the student. Everyone learns differently, everyone has different places that they will excel in educationally, and asking students to have the best GPA, which is made up of mostly test scores in different classes, and getting into the best colleges is just putting a lot of pressure on them. This is only going to work for a small amount of students, which are the students who test well. The ACT/SAT is a big deal when it comes to getting accepted to colleges. If students don't already have testing anxiety, it will often develop during this time. Students feel they need to treat themselves by buying Adderall or Vyvanse from other students who were prescribed it. It is not only dangerous for the students that are doing this, but it says something very loud about our society if they feel the need to buy drugs in order to do well on a test. We live in a society where everyone wants their communities to have the highest scores, the best college admissions, and the smartest students. A famously known advocate for educational reform, Michelle Rhee, stated powerfully, "Children are smart enough to know that you can't fix the schools if it's really the society that is broken, the decline of American education." In saying this, she hit the nail on the head and explains that teenagers and kids in the school system are not going to try harder and study more if they know that it won't end up helping them. And in the end, they're just going to be another number or statistic. If they only try to memorize things for an exam, they won't remember it in the real world. Going along with that, if they're only concerned about the exams and scores and memorization, they won't be prepared once they get into college or even the real world. With that being said, there are a lot of different factors that go into American education, and there are a lot of different stakeholders who are affected by it and affect it. The stakeholders involved include students, teachers, parents, school board members, and college advisors. It has been proven that in order to make the best environment to learn and thrive in, all the stakeholders must be involved and on board to make it happen. Students are obviously affected because they are the ones whose education is at stake and they are the ones who are going through the school system currently. Their parents are paying for that education and can also help by making a safe learning environment at home and staying involved in their academic life. Teachers are a big part of the process as well, as they teach the curriculum and have the power to change a lot within the classroom and in the student's life. The school board is a very large role, as they can change the curriculum, set goals within the district, and have a lot of influence over the school system. Lastly, the college advisors are affected because in the end, they are the ones who deal with students who cannot pass classes because they weren't prepared. They're the ones who decide which classes students take and which they will take once they get into college to help prepare them further. All of these must work together in order to create an awesome learning environment where all students can thrive, and it is our goal to make that happen.
Proposed Solutions by Zach Griffith. Some stakeholders have determined and implemented solutions for the problems with an American education. The stakeholders involved include students, teachers, parents, school board members, and college advisors. Research explains that success comes from creating an environment that involves all stakeholders in the decision-making process. Students believe problems could be resolved through project-based learning. This requires going beyond the textbook on topics that address real-world issues. Project-based learning is more demanding than traditional classwork. The traditional set-and-go method is not working with the current generation of learners. Students want to have the ability to be analytical thinkers. They feel they need to know how information connects to other disciplines as well. Integrated studies enable subjects to be investigated using many forms of knowledge and expression. Big ideas for better schools, 10 ways to improve education. Cooperative learning is another solution provided by students, stating that working together on projects requires collaborating skills, emotional management, and conflict resolution. The teacher would essentially become the facilitator of learning. Through expanding learning from the confines of the classroom, this will allow students to focus more on strengths and weaknesses versus test scores. Students feel that the primary focus is test scores and that is simply remote memorization, therefore we are rewarding a basic learning skill. They are also concerned with peer apathy, which is basically the lack of motivation some students demonstrate in the classroom, which creates distraction in the educational process. However, many students would agree it is time to allow for creativity and thinking outside the box. Teacher feels that the training they receive is not adequate to meet the demands of school teaching. Schools are doing poorly because colleges and universities are graduating students that are not prepared. Teaching could become more effective if teachers completed an apprenticeship from experienced and mastered teachers before entering the profession. However, there are other ways to provide quality education, and teachers realize the importance of building positive relationships with students as a priority. These relationships lead to greater student success. It is a common idea that nurturing students' interest and self-confidence is imperative. The use of technology to engage students through a more productive method provides higher achievement too. Teachers do believe that they need more training to use technology as a resource and the time to implement it into class instruction. The rigor for courses in high school must be challenging so that when students leave high school they are ready to join the workforce or attend college. Therefore, a high level of demand is on high school educators, which they believe reform is necessary and more resources should be made available for struggling students. Parents play a vital role in the improvement of American education. Parents should express meeting and setting goals in education to their children. They have a duty to push their child to make more challenging courses and monitor their progress. Parents cannot wait for the school to contact them in regards to their student. They need to become active in the school. They must join any activities that the school offers. This in return produces high-achieving students. The American family is the rock in which a solid education can be built. I've seen examples all over this nation where two-parents, single-parents, step-parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles are providing strong family support for their children to learn. If families teach the love of learning, it can make all the difference in the world to their children. Parents must talk to their children and listen along with setting a good example, which will lead to improved education. Parenting is as essential as education. School board members suggest that they must be allowed to set new policies and become more effective in education. They propose that in order to solve the problem, they must work collaboratively with the community. The involvement of the community leads to improved facilities, leadership, learning programs, and resources. Information briefing Iowa School Board's Foundation. They want to build home-to-school relationships. They must commit to a vision of high expectations and monitor these, making sure that the schools are working towards the goals that are established. Data should drive all decision-making processes to improve school performance and student achievement. They must also determine what type of professional development staff members need in order to be more effective and how they can provide supportive effort to schools through community efforts. College advisors recommend working with public high schools to make sure that curriculum is aligned to college coursework and vocational studies. When students enroll in college, they need help mapping out their college requirements. This is where the advisor can guide and lead in the education process. Advisors at high-performing institutions are well informed about their students. They know where their students are from, their preferred learning styles, their talents, and when and where they need help. They also establish high attainable expectations for students, making it explicit what students need to know and do to be successful. Success for students should be a priority, and they need meaningful interactions that will lead them in discovering new realms of education. Students need advisors that are willing to know them and spend time engaged with them while making academic decisions. The stakeholders need to work together and focus on what they can do to make changes in American high school education. These proposed solutions from each stakeholder is necessary if educational reform is going to take place. Personal agendas need to be set aside and the focus must improve.
Many good solutions have been proposed, but are they all going to be successful solutions? I will now have a closer look at the solutions SAC proposed to you and discuss their possible limitations. Most of the proposed solutions for the students are not in the students' own hands. Students being engaged in project-based learning, knowing how information connects, and expanding their learning opportunities outside the classroom is really not up to the students, but rather up to the teacher and the study plan that the class follows. The school system cannot demand students to know and to do this all by themselves. Students need help to get started and someone to follow up on them and give them feedback in order to be successful. As the entire school and education system is based off students' results and test scores, it becomes hard for the students not to focus on their test scores. The entire world focuses on test scores and compares them to other countries. U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan said in a statement, "While we are seeing some encouraging progress on many important measures, the United States performance on the 2012 PISA is a picture of educational stagnation. This tells us how important test scores are, and that taking our focus away from them is close to impossible." The solutions proposed for the teachers also feature some important limitations. First of all, even though we believe teachers might need more training before taking on the teacher job, the methods used in the training and education needs to be right and effective in order to improve the teachers to their best possible level. The suggestion of increasing the salary for teachers is not a bad idea. The only problem is the source of the money needed to increase their salary. As most school systems today struggle economically, it would have to be the taxpayer money that gave the teachers better earnings. Some people might be fine with paying extra tax as they have children in school, but most people either cannot afford paying more tax or gets upset just thinking about an increase of taxes. The proposed solution of using more technology to meet student needs again may cost a lot of money that the school systems do not have. Also, the teachers may face a variety of different problems by relying too much on the new technology and not the traditional learning methods. For parents, joining the school council or involved in some other way has many positive outcomes and is a great idea as a solution. The only problem is that not every parent is going to be able to get involved with their children's school in some way, and some parents might have a job that makes them unable to get involved. But also, there are not enough spots available for every parent to volunteer or join the school council. For school board members, community involvement is a good solution itself, but it is difficult to tell how much an involvement actually will help depending on the community it is being involved in. Further on, setting high expectations and policies in school is a good thing to do, but this proposed solution is rather depending on the teachers in order to be met, rather than the school board members. The teachers need to meet the expectations set and enforce the policies that have been made. Many good solutions were proposed to the college advisor as a stakeholder, but there are a few limitations. First of all, teaching self-management to incoming students seems like a great idea, but the only thing is that the responsibility lands on the student. You can teach students a lot, but still, they need to follow it and use it, and that is not guaranteed by teaching them the self-management. The proposal of having college advisors creating relationships with the students and learning to know the students better is a great suggestion. The only thing is, like my advisor told me when I talked to him about this, is that in order for this suggestion to succeed, it is important that all the students are treated equally and that some students don't get left behind. If everyone gets the same treatment and get the same opportunities, the solution might be successful. There are many great solutions for all the stakeholders in our controversy, but the limitations are holding some of these solutions back.
For students, a lot of people are proposing they should be required to have more project-based assignments, so that they could gain more from that independent assignment. It is true that students should shift their learning skills, but a gigantic shift may not be appropriate for them because that would simply magnify the gap between high school and college. What we propose the students should do is they should be more active in terms of learning. That is, the purpose of college education is to educate students how to gain what they need independently in the future career life by using any format of resources. Thus, it is unreasonable for students to be still relying on teachers to provide help. Rather, they should be able to utilize the instructor as a tool. This is not only advantageous for grade, but also helpful in future career life. Some of the teachers believed that they were not trained enough to be a teacher. That is in reality true, because teaching and knowing knowledge is two different things. Knowing knowledge is not necessarily to be able to teach to other people. However, it is also true that not every position has to be open to trained people. For example, there is no such a major called How to Be a Successful Man as Bill Gates. The same thing is here. The skill of teaching can be accumulated and improved. It is feasible to rank the teachers to different levels, and the salary will be given based on not only how much work they do, but how successful they were. The criteria can be an accumulation of how many hours or how much achievement the teachers received, and so on. This can potentially create the competitive force and make the teachers willing to improve themselves. Parents are always referred as a huge power besides the teacher in education system in terms of affecting the students. A lot of people are simply criticizing the parents in terms of how less they do in intellectual aspects, but they didn't notice that the fact that parents are not designed to help the students with their coursework. However, the parents should perform a very critical role in communicating. That is, the parents are definitely more easily to get information from their kids, which is also important in education. They should always be prepared to communicate with the teachers so that the teachers and students can be linked well enough, even though the students do not intend to do so. That may not be very often, but just once or twice a month may be very helpful. To be able to know what a school board member can do, it is really important to relate their normal function, which is to help plan the education in the community. The school member should correlate their students' own situation. To know the real condition of the education is important to design a plan appropriate and specific to the student. Sometimes it is the direction that determines how successful the student is. Also, the school board members have to do sufficient research before they actually do decisions, also because the direction is critical. College advisor will take account much for the students after colleges admit them. Advisor may no longer want to communicate with high school part because there should be sufficient interactions before the students get admitted. Instead, they should care more about the student's college life, especially how to deal with the intensive coursework. Students, especially freshmen, may be unable to shift themselves from high school to college so fast. Also, college is where the circumstance is more independent, especially when the students get isolated from their parents. Parents cannot perform a very intensive role here, but instead, the advisor should do well in guiding the students to be able to learn things independently, as started at the very beginning of the student part. Some take-home message of this issue would be: first, decline in education is happening and needs to be fixed. Second, many groups of people are involved in this issue. Third, every group has its designed role. And finally, only when these roles are properly fitted can this problem potentially be solved.